There was once an angel who burned so bright, even the darkness bowed before him. He never had to speak. Just by standing still, the light would find him, like rivers rushing home. He was the first masterpiece of the Maker, not a man, but something near enough to take God's place. And then, one day, the light within him stopped shining. Not because it was stolen, not because it died, because he chose to let it go out. You were flawless once. You walked among sacred flames upon the holy mountain, but you let pride rise within you, and that light became shadow. This isn't just the story of Lucifer, the light-bearer. This is the first time freedom became a weapon, and love was mistaken for chains. And in that single refusal, love curdled into law, and freedom sharpened its first edge. This is the moment the first no was whispered in a realm built on eternal praise, the first crack in heaven's perfect mirror. And he the first to be shaped, the most beloved of them all, chose a road no soul dared walk. Not because he didn't know what it would cost, but because he believed he deserved more. While millions bowed, he did not move. While choirs thundered across the stars, his silence became its own song, and in a kingdom radiant with praise, he became the stillness no one dared name. Then came the moment the thrones gathered, the skies hushed, and the Maker unveiled a new wonder, a child of dust, crowned with breath. Lucifer stared into the trembling glow of flesh and whispered, "No!" And from that moment on, light knew it could betray. The cosmos was no longer pure, and evil was no longer a myth. This story begins before Earth ever turned, before the first human breath, before time had a name. It begins with a single fracture in the heart of an angel once thought unbreakable. That fracture was where evil was born, and the first name it spoke was Lucifer. Evil did not roar when it entered creation. It arrived as a whisper in the mouth of an angel. Have you ever wondered if the first rebellion wasn't hate, but heartbreak? Chapter 1. The First Light. There is no morning more beautiful than the first morning in heaven, before time took its first breath, before and after had meaning. All that existed was a song, a single, endless note of becoming, and within that note, the first light was summoned, not with a voice, but with a thought so pure, so total. The heavens bent in reverence, not from fear, but because that light was too beautiful to stand before. Lucifer emerged as the prelude of the Creator, not born of dust, nor carved from stars. He was sculpted from the primal light, a radiance untouched by any world. He had no past. He was the beginning of beauty, of wisdom, of power. Heaven itself shimmered differently when his eyes first opened. Galaxies paused, harmonies adjusted. Even the seraphim, those burning ones, drunk with worship, stilled their praise to feel his presence. Even Michael, humblest among the hosts, once whispered, "I have seen nothing so radiant save God himself." Lucifer was not just an angel. He was the first symphony, composed by the breath of God, every thread of him his knowing, his voice, his form was so complete. It seemed the divine had poured out all perfection into one being. And perhaps that was the first mistake. Atop the holy mountain, where the stones burned with eternal fire, Lucifer walked like one entrusted with the password of existence. He didn't study, he remembered. He didn't train. He was, with each step, creation rearranged itself in his wake. With each word, the skies found a new color. When the angels sang, Lucifer led, not because he demanded it, but because no other could. Even the infinite looked upon him the way an artist stares at the one masterpiece they dare not make again. And God was pleased. God was loving, and that love was immense. But what in all creation could carry the full weight of the infinite's affection? Lucifer once could. But no one noticed. That gaze, that perfection, that love planted a seed in him, invisible, silent, real. The seed was not rebellion, it was awareness. The first eye in a realm of only thou, the first mirror held up to heaven's light. Lucifer began to spend more time alone. His voice still sang, but no longer outward. It folded inward, a light learning to admire itself. The other angels felt it a subtle shift, like a pause in eternity. But who dares question the brightest star in the sky? One day, Gabriel approached. "Lucifer, you seem quieter. Your light, it's changing color." Lucifer smiled. Not cold, not warm, just distant. "I'm thinking," he said, "about something we've never thought." "What is it?" "The meaning of perfection. What if there's something beyond it?" Gabriel said nothing. He felt something ancient stir but had no name for it yet. Heaven still sang, God still loved, Lucifer still led. But now, he knew he was leading. He knew he was shining. And the knowledge glowed like a question wrapped in fire. A fracture appeared, tiny, invisible, but real. Like a crack in the floor of the ocean hidden, but destined to summon a storm. Lucifer had broken no rule. He had not defied. He had not fallen. But inside he began to compare, to measure, to wonder. If God's light is infinite, then how can mine be seen? And if I was made in his image, must I remain forever beneath him? The first night in the heart of an angel was not darkness. It was a question. Lucifer stepped into that night, and his light began to tremble. Have you ever wondered if the first rebellion wasn't born from hate, but from being seen too brightly? Chapter 2. The Call of Freedom. At first, the questions whispered only within him. Can I reach beyond where I was placed? Is glory something to receive, or something I was born to create? Heaven had no night, but those thoughts were shadow. They moved like ghosts through the golden halls of eternity, slipping between notes of song and silences too holy to name. And there, Lucifer was no longer the conductor. He had become the one listening to himself. Each time the angels sang as one, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. Lucifer's voice hesitated by just a breath. No one noticed. But something ancient in heaven fell out of tune. One afternoon without sunset, for heaven knows no dusk, Lucifer stood atop Mount Dothan, where rivers of light crash like waterfalls. He looked down and saw the void waiting not with fear, but with potential. God stood beside him, like a father beside the shoulder of his eldest son. I am about to create something unheard of. He said, matter, time, space, and finally, humanity. Lucifer said nothing. They will bear my image. God continued, I will dwell within them, in fragile flesh. My light will take form. Lucifer turned, his gaze deep as a mirrorless well. Beautiful, unreflecting. You mean you'll become one of them? Yes, God replied, and my son shall be called Jesus, the light of the world. And something shifted beneath the surface of Lucifer's brilliance. Not jealousy, refusal. For all his wisdom, he could not conceive this descent. The infinite, stooping. The all-holy, subject to breath, and blood, and bone. Why, he asked. For love, God said. Lucifer turned away. And with that step, heaven tilted. The cosmos, once tuned to a single voice, now echoed with another. Can love exist without submission? Can a being of glory choose another path? He began to seek the radiant ones, not the naive but the wise, those who had tasted wonder, yet still carried questions beneath their wings. Have you ever wondered, he asked them, what it truly costs to kneel? We were made with freedom, but from the first breath all we've done is bow. Is that love or fear dressed in worship? No one answered, but their silence was too long to be empty. In a room without walls, for all places in heaven breathe light, Lucifer gathered the first thinkers. Not to plot, not to defy, only to ask. Does true love demand obedience? Can one love and still remain unbowed? Perhaps we were meant to love differently. And with each gathering, the light dimmed just slightly. Not darkness, but the beginning of choice. When they parted, they spoke no word, but something unspeakable remained between them. Gabriel came, his wings heavy with sorrow. Lucifer, what is it you're seeking? Lucifer turned to him, not with pride, not with wrath, but with aching clarity. I just want to understand why light must kneel before clay. Gabriel said nothing. He knew Lucifer was no longer seeking truth. He was searching for another way. God did not strike, did not accuse. He watched like a father watching his child walk deeper into a forest of his own making. Now and then, his voice called gently, Lucifer, my light, remember your glow reflects mine. Apart from me, it will fade. Lucifer bowed his head. He did not argue. He did not rage. But within him, a new voice stirred. If my light is merely a reflection, then why does it bend stars and make angels tremble? And he began to believe that his light was his own. Not a gift, not an echo, but a source. And from the moment he believed it, his light ceased to warm. It began to burn. He no longer sang, he spoke, and his words no longer returned to heaven. They pointed to a future without kneeling, without surrender, without a cross. Only light, his light, and in his heart. A question blazed like a star rising at midnight. If to love means to bow, then maybe I never truly loved. Have you ever wondered? If the price of freedom is forgetting where your fire came from. Chapter 3. The first refusal. There is nothing more terrifying than a heaven holding its breath. Not because of war, not because of wounds, but because one light had stopped singing. Lucifer, the first note in every hymn, the one through whom praise once poured like fire, now silent. Then came the summoning. No fanfare, no trumpets, no blazing clouds, just a whisper, threaded into the soul of every angel. Come, something sacred is about to be revealed. They gathered in the central square, where light flows from the very breath of God, like rivers of glory pouring from an unseen heart. Millions stood wings folded, eyes wide, but beneath the reverence, a tremor. Something was shifting. Lucifer arrived. Each step seemed to bend space itself, as if creation still honored him, even while it doubted him. No one spoke, and yet every glance avoided his. Even the stars refused to shine too brightly near him. He didn't mind. In his heart, he believed he was the revelation. Then the greatest light descended, not in form, but in presence. God, the nameless, the source. The infinite silence was not seen, but felt. He filled the space between atoms, between thoughts, between breaths, and he spoke not in sound, but in a knowing that pierced every soul. O angels, the time has come for you to behold what I have kept hidden since before beginnings began. Silence held its breath. I will create a world of matter, within it humanity, in my image, not of light, but of dust. Gasps not from disbelief, but wonder. And then, and I, my son, shall become one of them. Flesh, mortal, named Jesus the light within darkness. And all of heaven as one body knelt, not from command, but from awe, the infinite choosing to descend, to wear skin, to bleed that was a love no praise could answer. But one remained standing. Lucifer. God looked upon him, not with wrath, but with sorrow so deep, it reached the marrow of creation. Lucifer raised his chin, and the light around him lost its warmth. He spoke soft, but immovable. No, heaven recoiled. Time, which had never moved in heaven, suddenly paused. Lucifer stepped forward, his gaze no longer radiant, now sharp. I was the first, the original light. You placed your glory upon me, and now you ask me to kneel before a creature of clay. Some angels trembled, but some lifted their eyes. For the first time, not every gaze turned to God. Some turned to him. Lucifer continued, You say love kneels down. I say love stands for truth. I will not bow. Gabriel, barely above a whisper. Please, don't. But it was too late. Lucifer turned to the host. My brothers, look at this. The Almighty lowering himself to become flesh, and bidding us worship that. If my light is sin, then why did he make it so bright? God did not answer, not with words, but with pain, because true love does not force. And freedom, once given, can become a blade. Lucifer had drawn it, and he lifted it toward the stars. Then a light broke forth, not from God, but from a small, quiet figure. Michael. He stepped forward. No weapons in hand, only 3 words cutting across eternity. Who is like God? Everything froze. Lucifer turned. Not to the words, but to the question they carried. You, he hissed, think you understand love better than I. Michael bowed, and in that bow, glory chose humility. Lucifer roared, not with sound, but with a rift that tore through light itself. The split began. No blades, no blood, just choice. On one side God, choosing flesh. On the other Lucifer, choosing self. For the first time since light was born. One being said, I do not need you to shine. And from his lips, the last word of an angel became the first whisper of darkness. Have you ever wondered if the most dangerous rebellion begins not with hate, but with certainty? Chapter 5. The War in the Light. The first war in the history of the cosmos did not begin with drums. There was no charge, no generals on steeds of fire. It began with a silence, a question left unanswered, a harmony fractured. Why must I kneel? That whisper, spoken not in rage but in certainty, sliced through eternity like a blade made of light. Lucifer had said, no. Michael had answered, Who is like unto God? And heaven that once sang in a single voice split into 2 heartbeats no longer in rhythm. The sacred realm, once full of breathless awe, now held its breath for a different reason. Because the light was no longer safe. Lucifer no longer hid. He gathered the radiant, those whose wings once brushed the throne, whose minds danced at the edges of the infinite. He did not preach, he did not seduce, he stood, and they remembered who he had been. And in that memory, they believed, "We are not rebelling, we are awakening." In the corridors of light where hallelujahs once rose like tides, now murmurs bloomed. He chose weakness over glory. If we are light, why kneel to dust? We will build a new heaven not of obedience, but of will. Lucifer did not ignite them. He reflected them. And 1/3 of the host, the once pure stars, began to turn inward. While on the other side, Michael Plain, unwavering, walked the heavens with only one question. If our light does not come from him, what is it burning for? If pride must walk beside love, is it still love? And the angels listened. Those who still knelt felt their warmth remain, but those who stood grew cold. When the day came, heaven did not darken, but it dimmed. Upon the radiant hills, once song's birthplace, 2 armies gathered. Lucifer, his wings stretched wide, his presence now more furnace than flame, proclaimed, "I seek no throne, I seek justice. If the Almighty would become man, then I shall become God." Across the field, Michael stood with a sword not made of metal, but of vow. He spoke only once. "You cannot ascend where you were not summoned." Lucifer laughed, a sound not bitter but hollow. Then he rose, and struck downward like a comet of wrath. And heaven exploded, not with fire, but with memory torn, with worship shattered, with love divided. There was no death, only decision. Every blow cut through eternity itself. Lucifer fought with the agony of betrayal, not of being betrayed, but of feeling replaced. Michael fought with the stillness of truth. Their swords met, one blazing, one steadfast. Each clash shook the tree of life. Each cry rippled across unborn worlds. Lucifer shouted, "I do not hate you, I simply refuse to bow." Michael answered, "Then you've already fallen. Forgetting who you are is enough." And then as the light dimmed and the loyal faltered, as shadow surged like flood, Michael stood in the heart of the storm. He raised his sword, and with a voice that split silence itself, "By the name of the Almighty fall, Lucifer." The heavens tore, not with sound, but with the silent sob of glory breaking. Lucifer first light, morning star, heaven's muse was cast out. No scream, no farewell, just falling. And as he vanished, 1/3 of heaven fell with him like embers stripped from fire. And from that day forward, the stars sing in minor keys. The skies carry hidden wounds. The angels no longer praise without remembering. Because since that day heaven has known, even light can betray. Have you ever wondered if the brightest fall not because they were evil, but because they believed they were right? Chapter 6, The Abyss and the Oath of Shadow. No one knows how long Lucifer fell. Because where he landed, there is no time, no ticking, no turning, no dawns to count the distance between stars. Only depth and silence and a darkness so ancient. Even God turned his gaze away so that freedom could reach its end. He did not scream, he did not flail. Lucifer fell like a star that knew it was no longer a sun. Each feather of his radiant wings burned to ash, but he kept them open, as if to say, "If I am to be ruined, then let me bear it, beautifully," because part of him still believed he had chosen truth. And when at last he reached the bottom, a place without bottom, where even gravity forgets itself, Lucifer opened his eyes. They no longer glowed, they consumed. Around him, the 1/3 who had followed tumbled like broken halos, their wings twisted, their forms unmade. But this place was not yet hell. It was the fracture between the fall and the reckoning, the breath between praise and vengeance, a place where light cannot reach, but memory still stings. They remembered the hymns, the sacred fire, the unending nearness to God. Now, only the echo remained like smoke after incense. Lucifer sat alone. No tears, no rage, just a whisper that would not die. Why couldn't they see that I was right? Why must light bow? One of the fallen crawled toward him, eyes dim like coals gone cold. We have lost everything. Lucifer turned, his face no longer beautiful, but terrible, like a statue chiseled from a broken oath. No, he said, we've only just begun. In that dark, he spoke his name. Not Lucifer. That name was made of choirs, of sunrise, of holiness. He needed a name that could hold both truth and wrath. Satan, he said, the adversary, the challenger, the unbowed. Not a curse, a covenant. And he made his vow to the silence, to the ruin, to the God he once sang for. If I am denied the throne, then I will bring down every throne ever built in his name. That place became a temple of vengeance, not of screaming but of stillness so heavy, even light would weep if it wandered in. Lucifer raised his eyes. No light reached him, but he could feel what was coming. The world, the earth, the clay beings. Heaven's gamble, God's new affection. Humans fragile, fleeting, but loved with a love no angel ever tasted. And that would be his target. He summoned the fallen, no wings, no halo, only will. And he said, we are no longer light. We are the heat left behind when light chooses mercy. He did not sing. He declared, God made them in his image. Then I will remake them in mine. He says they are children. I will whisper into their breath, you were abandoned. He gave them Eden. I will give them mirrors so they forget who they are. And the fallen changed. No longer angels, not yet demons, but something in between. Born of light but baptized in choice. And in that abyss, the first unholy rite was spoken aloud. The oath of shadow. We were once light. Now we are memory. We will not serve. We will not kneel. We will not forgive. And Satan no longer morning star. But storm looked toward the world where breath had not yet begun. And he smiled, not in victory but in prophecy, because the greatest war had not even started. Have you ever wondered if the most dangerous weapon isn't hate but love, that refuses to bow? Chapter 7, Eden, the first temptation. There was no sound when earth was born. Only breath, the breath of God's steady, sovereign, sacred calling into the void things that had never been. Light obeyed. Seas rose. Trees stood. Beasts stepped forth from clay, as if the dust had always remembered his voice. But creation was not complete. The same hand, the one that once lifted Lucifer from light's first flame, now reached low into dust. He shaped a being frail, finite, flesh-bound, and then he breathed into him his own breath. Adam. No glow, no wings, no chorus followed his rising. Only breath. But within that breath was soul, a soul stitched with God's own spirit. And when Adam opened his eyes, heaven held its breath. Not from awe, but from wonder, for he was the first to look upon the face of the infinite with mortal sight, and still be loved. Satan saw, from beneath the fracture between realms. He watched through the crack in eternity where light once fell. He saw the same divine hand that once traced his form now cup the cheek of a creature made of mud. He saw the smile that once belonged to him rest now on the face of a man who could bleed. And the fire returned, not of rage but of purpose. Eden had no gates, no walls, only order. This tree you may eat, that one you may not. Every stream had rhythm, every creature had name, Adam lived as prince in a garden wired with glory. Then from Adam's rib, God shaped Eve, not to rule, but to reflect, not from dust, but from closeness. And the first love was not born from longing, but from recognition. They loved not from hunger, but because each bore the breath of God. Then Eden received a visitor. He did not sneak, he did not strike, he simply arrived, because fear had not yet entered the human heart. He did not come as a beast, but as a whisper wrapped in wisdom. Eyes gleaming like mirrors, voice like velvet smoke. "Hello, Eve." Eve did not fear him. She had never been lied to. She believed all things true. "Do you know," the serpent asked, "why God forbade you from that tree?" Eve replied, innocent as morning dew. He said, "We would die." Satan smiled. And for the first time, a smile carried no light. "You won't die. You'll awaken. Your eyes will open. You'll be like him. You'll know." Freedom. She looked again, not at the fruit, but through it. She no longer saw God. She saw possibility. To know, like him. Just a thought, but that was the seed. The same seed Lucifer once nurtured in heaven. Why must light bow? Now. Why shouldn't man rise? Eve reached. Adam watched. And did not stop her, because until that moment, no one had taught him how to resist. The fruit was taken, then bitten, then swallowed. And for the first time, God felt distance, not from disobedience, but from the silence that comes when trust is broken. No thunder, no blaze, just absence. Adam looked at Eve and saw no more reflected glory. Eve looked at Adam and saw they were naked. They had never known shame. Now it clung like skin. Satan turned. He did not laugh. He did not shout. He stepped back like a painter who had just finished his darkest masterpiece. He had not destroyed Adam. He had unseated him. He had not broken Eve. He had bent her away. From that day forward, every child of Adam would be born with a crack. Not in the body, but in the soul. A hollow that Satan swore to fill with shadow. Above, God walked in the garden. He called, "Where are you?" Not to search, but to offer a way back. But Adam and Eve hid. For the first time, light was rejected by those made to carry it. For the first time, man chose hiding over holiness, and heaven wept. Not for sin, but for distance, because the chasm had been born. Have you ever wondered, if the first temptation wasn't about fruit, but about forgetting that being loved was already enough? Chapter 8. The memory of blood when darkness became inheritance. The first time blood touched the earth. It did not come from war, not from the swing of a blade, not in sacrifice, not for justice, not even in fear. It came from a brother who killed his own. And the ground, the same ground God once cupped in his hand to mold a man, now opened to swallow blood. Because of man, Cain and Abel, firstborn sons, not born in Eden's glory, but through the breathless pain of a woman who had once walked with God and now walked beneath curse. Eve, no longer crowned in light, now wept in labor. Adam, once ruler of creation, now scratched at dry soil, sowing guilt into every inch of a ground that remembered paradise. And yet, they loved. They raised their sons with the fading warmth of Eden still flickering in their eyes. Cain the tiller of soil, Abel the keeper of flocks. They had heard God's name, but never his voice. They inherited a memory, not a relationship. And so, they worshipped, one from the fruit of labor, the other from the firstborn of life. God received Abel's, not because blood was better than grain, but because Abel gave without comparison. His gift was surrender. Cain's was measure. And when God did not look upon his offering, Cain said nothing, but his blood began to boil. Satan watched. He did not whisper. He did not need to. The seed had already taken root. Because darkness no longer needed a serpent, it was now in the blood. Cain invited Abel into the fields. No warning, no storm clouds, only two brothers beneath a quiet sky, and a stone. When Abel's blood spilled, the earth did not scream. It shivered, not from weight, but from memory, because it remembered it was made for life. And now it had tasted death. Cain sat beside his brother's body. He did not cry. He did not speak. He simply stared at the blood on his hands, bright, warm, red as breath, and could not understand why he felt nothing. Then God came, not with wrath, not with thunder, just a question the same kind he once asked Adam. Cain, where is your brother? Cain did not lie. He gave something more dangerous, a denial of responsibility. Am I my brother's keeper? That coldness was not Satan's whisper. It was the echo of freedom misused. God did not strike Cain down. He marked him, not to curse, but to protect, because blood for blood would only multiply the wound. Abel, his name meant breath, vapor, and like breath, he vanished. Not with legacy, not with lineage, only with loss. His death did not change the world. It simply revealed it. That humanity, left to itself, would become more like Satan without ever knowing his name. Generations passed, and in every cell, every strand of blood, a sliver of Cain's shadow remained. No child is taught to envy, to break, to destroy, and yet the moment a child compares, a heart hardens, a hand lashes, a soul recoils from light. Cain is remembered, not in mind, but in marrow. Satan smiled, not with joy, but with distance, because now his war no longer required him. Humans would teach the darkness to each other, not as evil, but as instinct, not as rebellion, but as inheritance. And in the quiet of every cradle, a question curls beneath the ribs. Will I be Abel or Cain? But few remember Abel's name was never meant to last. It was always just a breath. Have you ever wondered if the most dangerous legacies are not written in law, but passed in silence through blood? Chapter 9. The Pursuit of Light. When heaven chose to become man. It wasn't the first time God saw blood spill. Not the first cry in the wilderness. Not the first mother to bury a child beneath a sky that used to sing. But there came a moment somewhere beyond time, in the hush between galaxies when heaven fell silent. Not from helplessness, but from preparation. Because something was about to happen that had never been done. We call God Almighty, and we are not wrong. But we are wrong when we think he does not feel. From the moment Cain's hand struck, from the first betrayal in Eden, God never sat idly on a throne of untouchable light. He watched, he wept, he waited, because he knew a truth no angel could grasp. Darkness cannot be broken from above. It must be entered from within. Satan did not tremble. He saw the spirals of empire built with bricks of blood and crowned with human pride. He watched men carve gods from gold, pray to thunder, bow to smoke. He saw children born glowing dim beneath the weight of shame they never asked for. He saw faith turn into control and love into law. And he smiled, because light no longer lived where it was first given. It had to be found again. And God the Infinite, the fire, the one whose name is too holy to speak, removed his robe, not with thunder, not with fire, but with flesh, a womb, a whisper, a virgin girl holding a mystery inside her body. She did not understand. But she said yes to something the world would never stop asking about. God descended, not as a warrior, not as a lion, but as a child, naked, vulnerable, small enough to fit inside a mother's arms. Jesus! The name itself trembled in the spirit world. But to earth he was just a poor man's son, a carpenter, from a village no prophet mentioned twice. No palace, no army, only hands that would callous with labor, feet that would be pierced with iron. Satan watched. This is the plan. A man of peace, armed with only parables. He stirred doubt in every ear, every crowd. He made disciples sleep while their master bled tears. He made cheers turn into chants, crucify him. He made silver by betrayal. And when Jesus was lifted on the cross, naked, bloody, abandoned, Satan whispered, "It is finished." But what he never saw coming was that it was finished, because that wood was not Rome's weapon. It was God's doorway. For the first time since Eden, blood was shed not by Cain, but by God. And that blood did not scream for vengeance. It whispered, "Forgive them. They know not what they do." Satan stepped back, not from fear, but from confusion. He could not understand a love that would suffer to save the very ones who nailed it down. Could not comprehend a being with the power to crush, choosing instead to carry. And in that incomprehension, light returned. Not as fire, but as forgiveness. Not through angels, but through humans who chose to kneel. Not from fear, but because they saw the Most High kneel first. Satan still whispers, still tempts, still moves like shadow. But now, darkness is no longer a prison. It's a path, a choice. And those who choose light will find themselves pursued by one who already went to the pit in their place. The pursuit of light does not end in applause. It ends in silence in an empty tomb, where death waited to devour, but was outmatched by resurrection. God did not err in creating light. He simply had to enter its deepest absence. To bring it home. Have you ever wondered if God didn't come to prove he was holy, but to remind you that you are? Chapter 10. Revelation, the final judgment. There comes a time when every light stops flickering. Every blade returns to silence. Every whispered prayer ceases. And heaven opens one last time. Not to save, not to bless, but to judge. Earth gives no warning. The seas draw back, then roar. The sky tears like worn cloth. The sun darkens not from cloud, but because light has been summoned home. And humanity stands still. Hands that once held, once wounded, once wrote poems and curses now hang quiet at their sides. Because we all know, there is no more becoming, only revealing. Satan steps forward, no longer veiled, no longer pretending to be shadow. He arrives radiant not with holiness, but with the stolen echo of what he once was. Behind him the old legion fallen, deformed. Once angels, now scars. Before him Jesus, not the broken lamb, not the crucified, but the Son who still bears every wound and stands. His eyes don't burn with rage, only sorrow, infinite, like one who has seen everything. Satan smirks. So, you came back. You really believe they still want the light? Jesus doesn't answer him. He looks to each soul, to you, and asks only one question. What have you done with the light I placed in you? No thunder follows, no second asking. Because light doesn't accuse, it only reveals. You don't have to kill to fall into shadow. You only have to stay silent when truth cried out for your voice. You only have to kneel to comfort. Instead of conviction, each soul sees its own reflection and understands. No gavel, no courtroom, because justice was never a trial. It was always a mirror. Satan steps closer. One final taunt. You forgave them, didn't you? So why judge? Jesus replies, I do not judge, I simply honor their choice, and now they stand inside it. Then he points. To one side, light erupts like the first dawn. To the other, a chasm opens wide, not burning, but consuming. And each soul walks. Not pushed, not dragged. They simply follow what they loved most. Until the final moment Jesus looks at Satan. Not like a king, not like an enemy, but like a father gazing at the child who will not return. Satan does not bow, does not beg. Only one question remains. Then, what was I in your plan? And Jesus answers, Meo hanathor. You were the whisper that made freedom real, the night that gave light its meaning. But you would not return, so now you are nothing. And Satan, the first light, the ancient brilliance, the name burned into history is cast, not into fire, but into light so pure, darkness cannot exist beside it. He does not burn. He is undone. No scream, no trace, only silence. Heaven and earth pause. Not from grief, not from triumph, but because everything has returned to order. No more envy, no more questions, no more asking. Must I kneel? Because now light no longer demands it. It simply makes those who see it want to. Jesus walks among the souls, touches their foreheads, not calling them by their wounds, but by the names their light once knew. And heaven does not reopen, because it now dwells within them. If you're still listening, maybe your soul was just stirred in a place too deep to name. At Tales of Black, every story is a rite, a reminder. Some memories don't live in books, they live in your blood. If this story called to you, share it. Someone you know may still be hiding from their own light. And if there's a myth, a memory, a fracture of truth you carry in silence, leave a trace in the comments. Perhaps your story will be the next right spoken.